When I first started learning FlutterFlow, I severely underutilized components. I'd copy and paste the same widget across multiple screens, manually update the styles in like 5 different places, and then waste hours rebuilding layouts that could have been reused in seconds. Eventually, I realized that components aren't just a nice to have, they're a need to have. They're a massive time saver and probably one of the most important tools that you can use for effectively scaling your app. And honestly, this is something I wish someone had told me when I was first getting started. So in this video, I'm going to break down exactly what a component is, when to use them, how to build them the right way, and share some beginner-friendly best practices to help you avoid the same mistakes I made. All right, so let's start with the basics. What even is a component in FlutterFlow? A component is basically a reusable UI block. Instead of building the same layout over and over again, like a custom button, a card, or a profile tile, you can build it once as a component and then drop it into any screen on your app just like a regular widget. It's kind of like building with Lego blocks. You get to design your own custom bricks and then snap them together to build your screens faster without repeating yourself over and over. Okay, so now that you know what a component is, let's talk about something even more important: when you should actually use one. Because this is where a lot of beginners, myself included, make mistakes. Here are 4 really good signs that you should be building a component instead of repeating yourself. Number 1, you're repeating the same layout over and over. If you find yourself copying and pasting the same card, button, or layout more than once, stop right there. That's the perfect time to use a component. Number 2, you want reusable UI with different data. Let's say you're building like a user profile card. You want to show different names, photos, and roles, but the layout is exactly the same. Use a component with parameters, and now you've got a flexible block that works everywhere with different content. Number 3, your page is getting really messy. If your widget tree is starting to look like it's never ending, break part of it out into a component. It helps clean up your layout, keep your screens easier to manage, and improves the overall performance. And number 4, if you want to reuse your logic or layout across different projects, this is like one of the best things about FlutterFlow is that you can create your own libraries. So building your own button, modal, or workflow that you know that you want to use again, wrap it in a component. You can import those components across your FlutterFlow projects, which means you're slowly building out your own library and design kit that just saves so much time in the future. All right, now that you know what components are and when to use them, here are the 5 beginner-friendly tips that I wish I knew when I was first getting started. Keep components small and focused. Don't try to build out an entire screen as a single component. Instead, start with a small, like a button, or card, or tile. Each component should do one thing and one thing well. That way it's easier to test and reuse and as well maintain. Use parameters to make your components dynamic. Let's say you build out a card component. If you hard code the title and image, you can only use it once. But if you add parameters like title, subtitle, and image URL, you can use the same component across your whole mobile app with different data. Number 3, name your components clearly. This is a must. Avoid names like component 1 or my widget copy. Trust me, it gets confusing fast, and instead use descriptive names like primary button, user card, task tile. It'll help you stay organized, especially important as your app begins to grow. Number 4, add action parameters for buttons or taps. If your component includes a button or anything clickable, don't hard code the action into the component. Instead, use an action parameter like onTap so that you can pass in custom behavior when you use it. And number 5, keep your components self-contained. Here's a mistake I made early on. I built a component, but then tied parts of it to an app state, Firebase collections, or specific backend logic. And while that might work within that specific app, it makes and kills the component's reusability across different apps. Instead, use basic parameters for all dynamic data like text, images, and actions, and avoid hardwiring Firebase or data types inside components. Your goal should be make the component not care where the data came from, rather it knows how to display it. So, with all that being said, it's building time. Let's jump into FlutterFlow, and I'm going to show you guys how to build a couple different components. So we are here inside FlutterFlow, and I'm going to be showing you guys how to build these two components. These are pretty common components that you might see throughout an app. One is just like a dialog that has an image, some title, and a subtext with a button. And then another is like an alert or a custom notification. And you can change it based on a couple different options that will show you different variations of this. So we're going to start with the easier one, which is this dialog here. And first I'm going to come up here and click on create a blank component. I'm going to give this a good name like dialog 07 because I already have up to 6 done. And I'm going to add something inside my widget tree. So a little pro tip, guys. 9 times out of 10 am building in this view. I typically don't use this menu, but this one right here, just because I can drop it in much faster like that. So I'm going to start with a container. And inside that container, I'm going to have a column. This is all pretty standard building stuff. And I am going to give this container a border radius of 32. Just get some rounding going on, and a width of, let's just go 350. We're going to remove the height and let it expand however big it so chooses. And then inside our column, we're going to shrink that so it is hugging it. And now we're just going to add our image, our text, another thing of text, and a button. So I want to have different spacing. So I'm going to wrap these in a column, the text in a column. So now I have a primary column with an image, and then these two texts are here so I can set their separation differently, which I want 8. And then here I want everything to be 24. And then I want on our top level, I want 16, so everything is spaced away from the edges. Now I'm going to make this expand as large as it can, and also give it a border radius of 16, so we can see that we're kind of getting that consistent look throughout. Let's go ahead and make that button all the way as big as it can, and now we're going to just style things up as we go along. So let's make this title large. Let's make the text large. Okay. So now we have a basic component styled, but this does not have any dynamic data. It will just show this hello world and picture of tulips. So if we want to make this dynamic like we had talked about earlier, we need to connect some component parameters. So we can come up here to this component parameters thing right here, and we are going to need 4 different parameters. And I'm going to let you guys take a second to guess what those could be. All right, if you guessed image, 2 text, and a button action, you got it correct. Fantastic. Let's go ahead and add those. So starting with our image URL, we're going to add that parameter. We're going to make it required, and it's just an image path. Then we're going to add another parameter. We're going to call it title, and make this a string. Add another parameter. We're going to call this description. Make that a string, and then add another parameter called button action. And this will be a type of action. Excellent. Now we can click confirm, and we have all 4 of these parameters. Now we need to bind these parameters to this component so that way it is dynamic. So I'm going to come in here and go click on the image and then go down to path. So it's a network type and it's a path, and I'm going to click on image URL, and it, because I don't have a default, it's not displaying anything. I could put that there, and now it is at least displaying something in the UI, but the default would be blank. I need to bind the titles and the subtitles, so I click on my text, go all the way up to the top, click on title. This is a title. Its default is needed. I'm just going to put a space so it registers something. And description. This space for the default, and this is a description. Boom, done like that. So now these are linked up to our component parameters, and last but not least, we need some type of button action. So all we're going to do is go over to our action menus on the button, click open, on tap, add action, and we are going to execute a callback, and that callback will be that button action. And just like that, guys, you have your first component done. I can go back here and add that component, that new one that we just created, this Dialog 7, to our page, and we can see that we can modify this accordingly. So let me go grab an image link, a new one, and it's not what I wanted, but that works. Copy image link. So now if I come here, I can put that there. I got that new image, more Legos, title, could be whatever, and then we can create any type of action that we want. So you can add your backend logic as you so choose here. Just so I don't have an error, I'm just going to add a delay. So we just created our first component. This one was the easier of the two, and I'm going to show you guys how to build this next component right here, which takes in a little bit more parameters and gives you different variations on how to choose. So this is something I like to do, is I spend a lot of time like building out a component like this and giving it variations, so that way when I am designing and building, I don't need to go build 8 different ones. I can just drop in a component, select the variation, and it is good to go. It does take a little bit more time, so we are going to jump into that right now. And I will show you how to do that. So we're going to create a new one. We're going to call this alert example, like so. And we're going to create this component. So this component is going to start off with a container like we did earlier. Let's go ahead and give it infinite width. We're going to leave the height as it is for now. And we're going to drop in a row. So inside that row, we're going to have an icon. We're going to have a column, and we're going to have another icon. And you guys can see icon, column, icon. So now we are going to take the spacing, space it out as far as possible, and then also go ahead and give some padding on the sides. We want 16, 16. Let's go ahead and give 8. Let's just do 16 all around. Make my life easy. Okay, now we notice that this is not necessarily centered. So what we need to do here is wrap this widget in a row and then put that column in there. So now these are grouped together and they're spreading out. Let's go ahead and give that some spacing of 12 pixels. And now we can add our text text and our button here. So we can see that it's cutting off because our container has some alignment issues. I'm not a huge fan of this, so I'm going to shrink that column, and now it is fitting to the width of the items in here. Then I'm going to center everything at the top and at the top. So now we have something that's looking similar to this. Let's go ahead and keep on working on this. We're going to change these icons out. Info. And we're going to make this a close. Okay. And then inside our column that we have here, let's go ahead and give it some item spacings of probably 4. Wrap widget. We're going to wrap this in another column and then drop the button and rearrange things. So now we have a column like we did earlier. Make that shrink. And that way we can set the proper spacing of like 12 probably. That looks good. All right, let's go up to our top level container again. Let's give it some border radius of 16 just so it's a little bit nice and rounded. And we can see that's so far looking so good. Now, as we did here on our home page, we need to take in some type of color to change it, right? So you can see that it's changing over here. So how I did that was I actually went to my enums, which that might be a separate video, but they're just a way of like setting custom states in your app. And I created an enum called color, and I gave it brand, success, whatever variations I wanted. So I am going to create a separate enum just for this example, and I'm going to call this alert example because I think this is important. And we're going to go let's call this success and failure. Okay. So now we have 2 different types. We're going to just go with success and failure for simplicity's sake. We're going to go back to our example alert, and we're going to take in a component parameter called I typically name this after my enum, so I'm going to call it alert example. And that's going to take in a parameter called enum and a type called alert example, and it is required. So now that we have this basic parameter here, we can hook up all these dynamic variables to display the color based on this. And I'm going to show you guys how to do it for just the background, but then you can set this up however you so choose on each one of these items if you want. So we click on the background color. I want this to change to green or red based on whether or not it's a success or a failure. So how I do that is I click on conditional, and now based on this alert example, if it's equal to success, then make it green. And then you can make that red if you want it, just else red, or if you have more variables, you'd have to do this process for each one, changing it to if it's equal to failure, change it to red, and so on and so forth. Else, I'm just going to have else be primary background for right now. Okay. So now we have it based on here. So it's changing the fill color based on whether or not it was the component parameters. So if we come into our column real quick, we'll delete these so we can see it. We're going to scroll all the way down to alert example. Now if we set the alert example to success, it's green. And if we set the alert example to failure, it's red. So how you would build a component out like this, where it changes everything, is each one of these variables, selected gray, you would need to go and switch. So you can see that I have a bunch of conditional statements on the icon color, on the background color, on the border color, button color, text color, everything. And then it's very time consuming, if I'm being honest, but this saves you so much time in the future, because then you don't have to rebuild this every single time. So that kind of brings us to the end of this video. If this was helpful and you guys learned a little bit of information about how and when to use components, please give me a like, comment, subscribe. Any feedback would be amazing. And I will see you guys in the next one. Take care. Bye now.